Well, good evening. We are so excited for you to be here, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. I'm excited to be joined with three other stylists as we just kind of pull back the curtain and talk a little bit more about what truly inspires us about our businesses. We each come from different areas, and so it's just going to be fun, I think, for you to know different backgrounds of different stylists, and some may resonate with you, some may resonate with individuals that you know. But my name is Rebecca Firking. I am from Kansas, near a very small rural community. I am kind of the horse girl around here. I think Amy has had horses and everything, but I am the country cowgirl turned fashionista. And you see that in a lot of my wardrobe choices and stuff if you join us for the Style RX. But I'm just excited to be here with you three tonight, and I appreciate you all spending your time on this. Tabitha, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know where you're from and a little bit about your family.
Well, thanks. I'm excited to be here too, Rebecca. I'm Tabitha, and I actually live in Fishers, Indiana, which is just outside of Indianapolis. We've been here for about 9 years by way of Kansas City, by way of Nebraska, by way of Michigan. So all sorts of Midwestern states and cities. And I am a mom of two. I have a 11-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. And this is my 21st-ish season with cabi, a little bit more than 10 years.
All right, excellent. Well, we're glad you're here. Mariska, how about you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mariska Lehman. I'm from Vacaville, California, which is at the far east bay of the Bay Area. Yes, they call it the far east bay. Crazy. I live with my husband, Greg, and I have 2 step kids. And I'm actually a 3rd season stylist, so I'm fairly new to the organization. I absolutely love it here. Yeah, and I've been in Vacaville for 9 years. I actually came from Europe, so this is this fun journey here. It's awesome. Thank you for having me.
So a little trivia for you. This is funny, small world. I was born in Kansas. We moved to California, to Castro Valley. We lived there for 2 years. I've got lots of family in the Castro Valley area. And then the majority of the time we were in the San Joaquin Valley. So I've got siblings that are still out in California, in Stockton and Oakdale and Castro Valley, and lots of family. So small world.
It is, isn't it? That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. All right, Amy.
Really quick though, did I miss it, or did you and Tabitha forget to tell us how many seasons you've been a stylist?
Oh, goodness. I thought we were going to do more of that later. I'm just skipping around. So this is my 10th season with cabi as a stylist. I was a hostess for many seasons before that. And so yeah, lots of seasons.
Okay, so we have Mariska's in her 3rd, Rebecca's in her 10th, and Tabitha, you are in your,
I think 21st.
Okay.
A little over
That's
10 years.
awesome. All right, well, I will go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Amy Wolstenhume. I come to you from cold and snowy, well, I live in Wanship. According to Siri, it's Wanshit, so you don't want to tell Siri where I live. But it is just outside of Park City, Utah, and it's freezing cold here. I have 3 children. I have boys that are, 20, 17, and then a little girl that is 10. And this is my 2nd go at a cabi business. So in total, I would be going into my 23rd season, but I left for a while and I'm back. So technically I'm in my 12th season going into my 13th.
Yeah. And Amy, talk a little bit about what you were doing when you first were introduced to cabi.
Oh, okay. So I was young and I worked in the banking industry because my husband was self-employed. I got the health insurance, and he was also diagnosed with MS. So we had to have the health insurance. So the funny thing is, the first time I ever heard from cabi, the company was only 2 years old. And my best amazing woman, Lori, is my founder's best friend from her childhood. And the way she introduced it to me, funny story, was she threw a lookbook, which is not what our lookbooks look like today, into the drive-through window and said, "Hey, you always look so cute. You might like this." And she drove off. So that was my first introduction, and I had no idea what it was. I went, "Thank you." So
Yeah.
that was the first time I was introduced to cabi. And I had really young boys going through, I was working a job I didn't necessarily love, but it took care of our family for the insurance purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all, we've all been there at different times in our life. You do what you need to do in that season and hopefully move on from that season of struggle.
Yes.
Yeah. Tabitha, how about you? What were you doing when cabi found you, or when you found cabi?
So I had a wonderful job at a company that I loved, doing work that I loved, really felt like I was part of something bigger than myself, felt valued and recognized, and was kind of making my way up the corporate ladder. And I was not looking for anything else. I got invited to a cabi show, and not my proudest moment, but I'm going to be really transparent with you. I got the invitation and I thought to myself, you have to be skinny and rich to wear these clothes. Why would I go? So I've definitely prejudged what it was about. And it was actually before actual people were on our invitations. It was just our cabi dress logo, which has been gone for several years now, but I really had no reason to have that judgment. Clearly it was a reflection of how I was feeling about myself. And thankfully, my friend who was going to be the hostess said, "Don't worry about all that. Just come." I had a toddler at home. I was brand new pregnant. Nobody even knew yet. And she's like, "You don't have to buy anything. Just come. You deserve to have a night out." And so I went. And that season there was a couple of skirts that were shown pulled up as strapless dresses.
The reversibles?
What's that?
Were they the reversibles with the big waist?
No, I know what you're talking about, but not this particular season.
Okay.
And I'm just being really transparent with you. I was very judgy and was like, there's no way big girls can wear that. And so when it was time for try on, I went on up to my friend's guest room with the skirt pulled up as a strapless dress to basically prove, I'm not even going to say what I thought I was going to prove. And instead, I literally felt my shoulders go back and my chin go up, and I was transformed. I realized in that moment that you really do get what you pay for, and that when you buy well-made, designed for an actual woman's body, you feel better about yourself. And prior to that, I really, I hadn't learned that lesson. Growing up, we didn't have a lot. And so I didn't have the opportunity to learn that sometimes spending a little bit more meant you got a little bit better quality. Anyway, all of that to say, I ended up buying that outfit. So I spent more on that outfit than I had probably spent on clothes the prior year, 5 years combined. But I felt amazing every time I wore it. And so fast forward, shopped again after my baby was born, even though I was, had no business buying new clothes. I was on maternity leave, yada, yada, yada. But again, felt amazing when I wore cabi. And so I became a hostess. And like I mentioned before, I wasn't looking for anything, but what had happened is my career took me from being in the field and like working with the people to cube life. And even though it was right for my career, it was right for work-life balance, I really, really missed that instant gratification of making someone's day. And so that is how cabi came to be for me. It was a way for me to get back to the people and to be able to work with people in a way that met their needs and exceeded their needs and made a difference. And so that is how it happened. I did it alongside my other job until we moved here. So that was always the plan, but God, spirit, universe has different plans. And now it happens to be the only job that I get paid for.
Excellent.
I
Well,
like that she said it's the only job she gets paid for.
Yes, and I think that's very important because I know you work very hard in a lot of other areas, not just with your family, but you're very active in your community and your school, and you put a lot of effort and love into everything that you do. So I wish that you were monetarily paid for that, but I know it pays back dividends in other ways. So that's, yeah. Mariska, tell us just a little bit about what you were up to when you first experienced cabi.
All right, it's quite a fun story. So I had just returned from Europe. I'm half Dutch. My mom is from the Netherlands. I went to college in the Netherlands, and I actually studied law. I have my master's degree in law and worked in private equity and realized pretty quickly, I don't like this field. So I started a fashion blog and packed my bags, moved to Paris, roamed around Paris, moved to London, roamed around there. I was like a nomad for a year. And then I found that I was living the starving artist lifestyle. I was so broke. I had no idea how to monetize a blog. And I was like, well, this isn't working so well. I really like food and having a roof over my head. So I went back home and I was kind of like, oh, I'm so defeated. But I went and worked for my mom. My mom has an answering service. And at the time, the business hadn't really had any marketing or any updating. So the first thing I did was go out in the community and start networking. So I, at this point, knew no one in our area. I had been gone for so long. So I go to the Chamber of Commerce and there's this woman who walks in. She's the chief ambassador and she's like amazing looking. And she introduced herself as a cabi stylist. And I was like, oh my God, she looks perfect. She's like, everything, every detail was awesome. And I remember being invited to my first show. I had no idea what to expect. And I was like, well, I'm going to go see what happens. And I remember thinking, wow, everything's great. And I was kind of a slow person to get into it. I bought one top. I bought it. I still have it. And it still goes with things. So the clothes last a long time and they go with things from all kinds of seasons, which I love. So this was back in 2012. I became hooked. I was that person. I was kind of a cabi groupie. So I went to like 5 other people's shows, just like, you know, she'd call me and say, hey, I'm doing this show. Do you want to come? And I'm like, yes. $500 later, I was buying more clothes. She did ask me to be a stylist. I did turn her down, I think 3 times. And fast forward, it was actually 2018. She actually has since retired and I haven't had a new stylist. And, you know, 2018, I was kind of getting out of the business because even though I thought it was going to be, you know, like me and my mom forever in a business, I realized we aren't the best fit to work together, which was really tough. And I was like, oh God, what am I going to do next? So I stopped. 3 days went by and I was like, yay, the 3 days, I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to live my dream. And then I went, oh, I don't know what's going to happen to me. Oh, and I had a show on the calendar. I was like living in my little cocoon and I didn't even invite anybody. But, you know, the stylist still came. She brought all the clothes and I looked at her. She looked so happy. And I was like, I want to do this. So I just signed up on the spot and here I am.
That's so awesome.
And you know what I love about your story and Tabitha's, and we're going to hear Rebecca's soon, is that you guys had these ideal careers. You know, I think sometimes, at least an insecurity that I had when I got into this the first time is I'm working with all of these brilliant, educated, professional women. And who am I? You know, because I don't have a college education. And so I love that you two really still think that cabi is a tangible, amazing career when you could have been going a whole different direction. So I love that about your story. Rebecca.
Yeah. So, like I alluded to earlier, I am still really in my natural form the complete tomboy. And when I initially was introduced to cabi, I was very much the Wrangler jeans and boots and ball caps and all things outdoors and dirty and whatever, animals, all of that. Funny enough, however you want to say it, God has such a sense of humor, and I see that in many ways in my life. But I got a wild hair and decided I was going to be in the beauty industry. Like, no, where did that come from? It was truly a God thing. So I decided if I wanted people to take me seriously, I better figure some things out. So I hired an image consultant to completely overhaul my look and my wardrobe and teach me about makeup and all of the things. And then just really invested in about a decade's worth of training to do makeup artistry and figure out wardrobes and things like that. But that's really what kind of kicked off me learning about cabi initially. I had hired this image consultant to help me, and she was a cabi stylist. And so in addition to going through and helping me strategically build a wardrobe, we worked through all of the other pieces, and I was introduced to cabi. And I think that I had very much the same thought as you've heard several times tonight. I cannot believe I'm spending this much on clothes, because I was very much the clearance rack girl. And not that it really served me, because I had 3 closets full of clothes and nothing to wear. I don't know if anybody else has been there before, but that was completely me. And I bought a few shirts, and they were the ones that I wore all the time. And then I started hosting and reserving samples and, just doing all of that. And it wasn't until much later that she actually said, I think you probably should look at this as a business. So I'll share a little bit more about my story on the business side later, but I would love to hear, Mariska, from you, just really, what brings you the most joy in your business? What do you just absolutely love to do with this business?
For me, what brings me the most joy is the community. It's bringing women together through the shows. I mean, just watching women sort of come together, give themselves that time. I've heard over and over again, I never thought I was worth it. And it's amazing to hear them sort of discover this with all of their friends while they're not wearing any clothes and throwing shirts at each other and all the, the craziness that comes with a very fabulous cabi show. And I love the cabi community on the inside too. Like, I feel like we're all family, we're just like sisters, and it's awesome. And it's cool because that's the energy that we project to other women. That's what we're doing, is like we're kind of building this beautiful world of awesomeness. And it's like, I feel like personally, I know this is probably like crazy and woo-woo, but it's like it's a direct contribution to world peace. That's the way I see it, because everyone's so positive, right? So that's how I see it. That's what brings me joy.
Yeah, I love it. It's very very true. And I come from a vast direct sales background with several different companies. And I can tell you that culture that you alluded to, with just the camaraderie and the collaboration over competition and just the mindset, is so different with cabi than it is with other companies. So I really appreciate that as well. Tabitha, how about for you?
So much. I think I could totally say ditto to what Mariska said, but I think the other thing, and I'm really sensitive to how I say this, because I don't like to sort of feed the illusion of women being able to have it all, because I think we can, but not necessarily all at the same time. However, I feel like cabi has given me that. And I say that because this job that I said before that I did love, but I was working more than full time. I mean, my nature is sort of workaholic, right? And so when you're in an environment, and especially in the corporate world, where that grind and that go is sort of the expectation, and then you mix that with your own overachiever ways, it means you're working a lot. And that was okay with me. Like I didn't complain about it. It wasn't like, oh, if I could only work this hard, for myself instead of the man, life would be so much better. I didn't have that thought, because I was part of something, and I was proud of that. And it wasn't until that was gone that I realized so much of my identity and so much of how I thought that I contributed to the world was wrapped up in that job. And so what I've realized now is that I can have that career, I can be the businesswoman that I was, but now I can do it on my terms and not on someone else's. And I wouldn't have told you at the time that I was doing it under someone else's guise or restrictions or expectations. It wasn't until it was gone that I realized that about myself. And so now I get to be that businesswoman. I get to crunch the numbers. I get to set goals. I get to achieve goals. And I get to be the volunteer that my servant's heart desires. And I can be at my kids' school when it's not virtual. And I can be at the bus stop when they are going to school and not part of a virtual learning experiment that is happening during a pandemic. So I guess what I'm saying is that I get to have it all without like killing myself trying to do it all.
Without sacrifice. I think that's such a great point that you bring up, and just the fact that there's many women that have a cabi career alongside another career that they do. And so this is very much, you don't have to be unhappy with where you are. You may be just looking for a little bit more flexibility or a more time with girls in a social type environment. And so I think that's an important thing. When
well, like I said, I did it alongside my corporate job, and in circumstances outside of really my choosing. I mean, I say that kind of half true, which we can talk about more later, but I would still be if things hadn't changed, because it was never my goal. I mean, there's a lot of women who start cabi with the goal of replacing their corporate job's income so that they can be home with their kids or have more flexibility or whatever. That was never my goal. If you would have told me 10 years ago that that was the plan, I would have laughed in your face.
Yeah, for sure. Amy, tell me what makes your heart sing.
Well, there's so much about this business that makes my heart sing. I want to speak to a little bit about what Tabitha was just talking about, because I did mention I've done this twice, and I only talked about the first part of what got me into cabi. And then Rebecca, you mentioned you have a big background in the direct sales, background. And so for me, I was always looking for something other than the banking industry. My husband used to joke that I was the .com girl because I was always willing to try something. So I sold Zango juice and all these other things. And I initially left cabi, not by choice. I left cabi because it was the fall of the economy in 2009. And our other business also depended on expendable income. And so I was also pregnant. I didn't want to give up time with my newborn baby. So I ripped the Band-Aid and left cabi. And it was so hard and so emotional for me because of all of these things that we're talking about, because of the relationship side, because of the culture. And it was so hard. I didn't host one show in the 5 years I was gone. And in those 5 years I was gone, I lost myself. I lost myself as a person. My husband's health wasn't great, so I kind of threw everything into my husband and my kids and to a job I hated. The banking industry also was crumbling at that time. If you remember, I actually worked for Washington Mutual Bank and they crashed and Chase took them over. So I went through all of that on a professional side. and I really lost joy. So you asked me what brings joy, and I can tell you my way back to cabi was actually finding myself again. And I knew what it took to run a cabi business and to run it very successfully. And that scared me to death because I'd done it once and I didn't know if I could do it a second time. I didn't know if I just got lucky or if I just worked really hard. But I also knew, because I did do it on the side, I worked in the banking industry and then did cabi on the side. But I also knew how quick my kids were growing up and I didn't want to miss out on them. And so my way back to cabi was just me finding myself again. And funny thing is, I was going to work. It was 8 a.m. I was at a stoplight and I called my former team leader. I hadn't talked to her for a little while. I'd never hosted a show. And I said, I'm sorry it's so early, but I knew you'd be up. I'm at the stoplight. And I was in tears. And I just said, I have to do cabi again. I said, I haven't even told my husband, but I know I need to do this. And it was like that. The universe was just smacking me. And I said, but I have to figure out, I've got to buy a car. I have to get insurance somehow, and I have to have the universe align. So my way back, I actually did quit my banking job. I dove in both feet, and this is all I do now. And what brings me joy? I don't want to cry. It's the impact of the relationships from the women that I've met. And I think the one thing that makes cabi stand out, and I'm going to say get you out of the muddy waters of direct selling into the clear blue waters of what cabi is. There's only 4,000 stylists or just under that all over the United States, Canada, and the UK. So it's a very small community. It's a community where we collaborate with each other. I mean, look who's on here. We've got Kansas City, we've got California, we've got Utah. We've got so many people that come in here. We're from 2 different founder organizations. But the women that bought clothes from me 12 years ago, and then I left for 5 years, we still had a friendship and we still had a relationship. And they're real. And I live on a mountain surrounded by boys and sagebrush. And I have my little girl. And you know, the other thing that brings me joy is knowing that she's being raised, knowing that if she works hard at something, she can make it happen for herself. And she's by my side and she stamps my books. And those are things that can't be replaced. And I can honestly say, having to build this business up twice, I say 2.5 times, because now we've been through COVID. So I feel like we've had to reinvent the wheel a little bit, but it's a very tangible business. And I know if I need a little extra money, I just need to work a little harder. I know that I never missed one of my boys' football games. And I just had my second child, who I have taken to football games since he was in the 6th grade, finish his senior year. And they were lucky enough to get to play in person. And because I went back to cabi, I never had to take a day off. I always blocked their calendar out. And that's what brings me joy. I never got to be a stay-at-home mom, but I never had to be a work first mom. I never had it all at the same time, but I got to figure out that balance and I got to block out my calendar. And after leaving this company and looking for other things, I can tell you there's nothing out there like cabi.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I love that you kind of talked a little bit about that entrepreneurial mindset. And I think that that's so very important. I love the fact that I determine my income, not someone else telling me what I'm worth. And so, especially today when, we may think that we've got a great thing, but if we're reliant on an employer, they may or may not be here. And so I really feel it's important, whether this is just kind of an additional income or, you know, a fallback plan. Sometimes plan B becomes plan A. And we hear that over and over and over with stylists that they were just doing this for fun. And then all of a sudden their husband, who was the breadwinner, lost their job, and they had this business that they were able to kind of ramp up and actually support their families. So I think that's fabulous. I really love the confidence that I can help women cultivate within themselves. I think that sometimes we as women pour into others so very, very much, and eventually there's nothing left to give. And if I can just pour into women and let them know how important they are to not only me, but in the little ways that they may contribute, they may not even feel like they're doing anything, and yet they're making a difference. And so I just love being able to help them. I know that my confidence level has changed so much just in the last several years. And I love to share that with other women as well.
Rebecca, can I speak to that really quick? All four of us are sitting here together because there's not a hierarchy in cabi. And I mean, I have been in a room sitting on the floor with Sid Ryan laughing. She's the executive founder of the company, talking about who our celebrity boyfriends were when we were young. You know, there's not an ability, this is a company that is tangible for anyone to come in and do really, really well. And it is based on how hard we work, but it's a company that we're never alone. I mean, Mariska and I only met about a month ago because we decided to join a call that Sid Ryan offers for us to jump in on. You and I met at a leadership training. I've been in several of Tabitha's facilitating classes that she's given. And look how we've been able to come together. And you don't see that in other companies, especially, I mean, we're all from different founder organizations. So it really is something pretty unique. And I think the other thing that's a little unspoken in this company is the training that we get outside of fashion. And I have gained you're talking about giving someone self-confidence by the way they look and how we're training them to dress and to stand a little taller. But my inner confidence has become, I spoke on it a little bit, I don't have a college education. And so 90% of my clientele are business professionals. And because I have been trained in leadership, I've read books, I've been in book clubs with, you know, cabi women, we bounce things off. I have a confidence that I would have never had. And I think that's sort of unspoken in this business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Tabitha, did you have something to add on that?
Well, I think that we say this a lot, and depending on how much of a cheesy, cheese fry girl you are, you like that or you don't, but we say all the time that we're in business for ourselves, but not by ourselves. And the thing about that is that it's not just like a poster in the back room. Like, it is how we live, how we make decisions, how our leadership team makes decisions. And so, I think about when I was first, when we were first talking about moving here, I was really intimidated at moving to Indianapolis because there's a woman named Michelle, and she was on all the training videos, and she did all this. She was like this like icon in cabi. And so here I am just feeling a little bit like I can't be like going to Indiana. Like, what's she going to think of me? And, I hadn't, you hear that we have this collaboration, and you hear that we don't work in, we don't have our own regions or our own, places that we work. We can work anywhere, but you still kind of have this like intimidation factor when you see that. And instead of her being like, who do you think you are coming into my town? We had coffee, we had lunch, and she was my first friend in Indiana. And that is, I mean, when we say collaboration versus competition. That is how we live and act and breathe and run our businesses. And we do better because we're in it together. And that is not just a bumper sticker. Like, that is why I think we're probably all still here, and why we have a successful business through a pandemic and, through the ups and downs of life, because we're not in it alone. And I think that that's just a really important point to make, that you don't necessarily know until you're here.
Yeah, that's huge, Tabitha. And I think that that's one of the things that I really appreciate is the culture of cabi, and just the fact of we are who we are, and this we pay attention to demographics, and we want stylists to be successful. And so we are set up for success in the fact that, if they pull the demographics and you cannot have a viable business in that area, your application is waitlisted, because they don't want for you to come into a not great situation. And so we do pay really close attention, and that helps that culture, because I know I travel to several different states, and I love to be able to do that. I've got friends all over that enables me to get out and go see them, but it's not a matter of feeling like I'm infringing on someone, because we always kind of make sure that if there's new people there, or if somebody walks in with a cabi top, then we make sure that, hey, I'm so glad that you're here supporting your hostess today. Who's the stylist that you generally work with? And so we really talk through that, and that just perpetuates that culture.
Mariska, have you noticed that since you're one of the newer stylists? Was that one thing that surprised you?
Oh, absolutely. I am used to the more competitive type of environment. And one thing, okay, so I'll be totally transparent. My first season tanked, but apparently Missy Singer's season was like worse than my first season was worse than my first season. So then I felt better, but I was really bad. But I was just like, oh my God. So it was not good. And I felt really bad. I was like, oh my God, I had to do the waiver. And I was like, but the interesting thing was, because I of course thought, I haven't proven myself. Nobody's going to want to talk to me. I have to work really hard. Instead, people reached out to me and said, hey, what can I do to support you? Why did you come here? You had it's okay. Let's not think about this season anymore. Let's just move forward. Oh my God, let's work together. Wouldn't it be fun if we did this? And then all of a sudden I had a really great season through COVID. Yes, that was my second season when that happened. I was like, no, I'm not quitting. But it was amazing. It just shocked me. But it's just awesome, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Awesome, I love everybody. I know, yes.
I love that, because this truly is a building business, and so you may get a slow start. We have some that come and they're rock stars right from the very beginning. That was not me, and I just saw that every season it just grew, and we've got the quality and the consistency in our designs that women just keep coming back for. And so it's really easy to just keep building that business over time, because you keep your same clients and your same hostesses, and you gather more hostesses and more clients. And it's just fun. It's fun to see that process.
Well, and I think that brings up to a really good point, that as wonderful as we are all making this out to be, it is still work, right? And so I think, one of the things that I shared with someone the other day is someone asked me the question, how long does it take to build a business? That was kind of the gist of the question. And I really feel, and you all can, add or disagree or whatever, but what I told her is I really feel strongly that you need a good 3 to 5 seasons. If I really, really, when I talk to women about this business, I really encourage them to commit to 5 seasons, which is basically like 2.5 years. And I say that because it takes time. And, not to say that you can't have an incredible business out of the gate, because you can. To your point, Mariska, you could start and think it's going to be great, and then we have a global pandemic and it's not great. Or like in my case, I had incredible support at the beginning. Lots of people like, oh, I'm so excited for you, Tabitha. And I had hostesses all over the place. And then next season came along, and some of those women weren't really that into hosting or really that into cabi. They were in for me. And so it became not so much that they were doing me a favor anymore. It was kind of like, oh, well, she had this great season. She's up and running. And so now I'm on my own. And it wasn't like in a negative way. It just was more about me than it was about cabi. And so, my second season actually kind of like dipped from my first. But what I realized is like, oh, well, I met, and I love telling the story because one of those women who wasn't really, she wasn't against cabi. It just wasn't, fashion just wasn't her thing. And, having women over, it just wasn't her thing. But she introduced me to Natalie. Well, Natalie has literally hosted a show every season since then. 20 seasons worth of hosting. I would have never met her had it not been that first friend. So when you think about, oh gosh, I don't know enough people, or I don't have a big enough network, and like, it isn't about who you know right now. It is how can you grow that? And I love playing sort of like that 6 degrees of separation. Like, okay, how did I meet this hostess? And if I can trace her back to this show and that event and this whatever, it's kind of a fun game to play. So I think, it's important to know that while this is wonderful and fun and relationships and so fulfilling, it is work. And so you have to know that going into it, that it's not a quick fix and you're not going to make $1 million in the first season.
But you know what? Every tangible business is work.
Yes.
And there's always going to be a part of any business that maybe isn't the fun part. I don't know about you guys, but when tax season comes around, I just don't even want to walk in my office because it feels like quicksand, but I have actually found that a lot of the administration part, the returns, the exchanges, that's actually a relationship builder if that's the way I go into it. If I don't grumble and go, oh my gosh, this lady wants to return a shirt. Instead, I use it as an opportunity to be like, oh my gosh, how come this shirt didn't fit? Tell me about it. Why didn't it work for you? And I actually take that time to get to know her. I'm going to serve her better. That's my ultimate goal. I always tell my clients, I would much rather you return something and come back to me than have it hanging in your closet and regret your purchase. So I think that about small shows too, just where Tabitha is going. Both times I started this business, I told myself, no show is a bad show because you just never know who you're going to meet, how it's going to impact others. And I think that's the one thing that we can all say, we're in this because there's a piece of this pie that helps us be others focused. And that feels really good, especially in really hard times. So I also think with COVID, Mariska is talking about starting it over, how fortunate we are to be an omni-channel business, meaning we have technology. So we have our websites, we have Cabi Tap. We are not brick and mortar, but most of us can bring somebody into our homes or go somewhere. We also have Zoom now, different technologies. We really have everything as far as cabi goes, and we don't have to pay for our websites. So I think that we really are set up for success the way cabi has this going. And from Tabitha and I, from the time we very first got involved with cabi, everything was done by paper. There was not even like a glimpse of, the ordering used to take hours because computers were slow back then. And so the way that cabi has stayed so relevant, in fact, if anything, they've been ahead of the curve with our technology. We were so ready for COVID and we didn't even know it. So I just think all of the aspects that we have, the way that we can reach out. I had been Skyping clients that I had never met in Louisiana way before Front Row came out. But now they love Front Row because they're like, oh my gosh, this is so great compared to the way you used to do Skype. I was always half naked behind the curtain because they wanted to see so many things on the body and I couldn't keep up, So I love that we've stayed relevant and almost ahead of what relevant is.
Yeah, and Amy had mentioned Cabi Front Row, and if you've not experienced a Cabi Front Row show, you really need to, because they're phenomenal. It's like you're sitting on the front row of a fashion show in Paris or New York, wherever you want to pretend you are right now, and we can't really travel. And you get to see the clothes and movements, and it's always interesting to me, the articles that I read on different retailers and malls closing, and all the different things that retailers are focusing on now. Well, that's the things that we started out with. We started with that in the very beginning, and so we've been just really cutting edge. I also like the fact that we are a direct line to our design team. So, there's not all these different, Tabitha talked about the 6 degrees of separation. We don't have that. There's lots of interaction between not just our design team, but our executive team. And when we speak, we are listened to. It does not fall on deaf ears. I know that several of us were in on a meeting on social media and just different technology pieces. Was that just a year ago this fall? I think it was. And we had like 2.5 days that we met with our executive team, talked all technology, all of these things that we wish we could have, pie in the sky ideas. And I'll be danged if all of those things are happening now. They've rolled all of these advancements out, and for IT to move that quickly, if anybody has worked in that realm before, that doesn't usually happen so quickly. So it's I like that piece of it.
Well, I think this has been really, really amazing. Is there anything else that you guys want to add before we end for today? No?
I think clearly we could talk for hours.
Yeah, for sure.
Hours.
What I love about this casual, we can call it a cabbie chat if you want. Rebecca and I, because this is an olive branch to our Style RX, we're really calling it Pulling Back Cabbie Curtain. And that being said, we are going to be doing this every first and second. Today is a Friday, but we're going to, moving forward, do this every first and second Wednesday of every month. And the first Wednesday is going to be just like this. We're going to pull in extra stylists. We're so thankful for Mariska and Tabitha for joining us today, hearing their stories, telling us their experience with cabi. And then the second Wednesday of every month, we're actually going to take a deep dive into the different ways we make money. So I'm going to touch on that really, really quick. The first thing, it's really important to know that our hostess is a business partner. So they are working to earn hostess discounts at the same time we are working to make commission. This is a commission-based company, period. That's it. It's that easy. So the more discounts they make, the more money we make. It's a perfect partnership. And it's really why we build these long-term relationships and why women want to come back to us season after season. We get 100% new inventory every 6 months. Who does not want to see that? We make money by our retail sales in commissions. We make money off our sample sales. So if you're not aware of that, we will dive into that a little bit more next week. And then we make what Rebecca calls a leadership bonus. This is not a recruiting company. We do not get paid to pull people in. This is not a business where you can buy in for the discount. So if we get extra commission, if we get that little leadership bonus, it is truly because we're not alone in this business. That's how this stems for this whole conversation that we've been talking about this community. It's because we truly learn to lead and we don't want anyone left alone. It doesn't matter if they're our team member or if there's somebody else that we know that might be struggling, we're willing to pull them in. And when I get a leadership bonus, I kind of consider that I'm being an active part of the community. So if my team members do well, I'm doing well, and then we can do really well in the community. So it's just amazing. I think also next week we will touch on our Heart of Cabi Foundation and why that is such an important part of the business, because when someone starts a business, we fund small business loans as well. So those are some of the things to look forward to next week when we pull back the cabi curtain and take a deep dive into the cabi business. But for today, we just want to thank you so much, whether you're watching this on the recording or you happen to join us live. We are so glad that you are here. And Mariska, Tabitha, we can't thank you enough. And we would love to have you back. So ladies, thank you again.
Thank you for having us.